December 18th, 1944, 0430 hours. Schnee Eifel Ridge, Belgian Ardennes. The Wehrmacht soldiers who overran the American positions that frozen morning discovered equipment that would shatter every assumption they held about their enemy's industrial capabilities and the true nature of the war they were fighting. The fog hung thick over the snow-covered forests of the Ardennes as Obergefreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann led his squad through the abandoned American foxholes. His boots crunched through ice-crusted snow as dawn broke on the third day of Operation Wacht am Rhein, what the Americans would call the Battle of the Bulge. Hoffmann's unit, part of the 18th Volksgrenadier Division, had been advancing rapidly through the shattered American lines. The 106th Infantry Division had collapsed under the initial assault, leaving behind positions hastily evacuated in the chaos of the German breakthrough. What Hoffmann and thousands of other German soldiers discovered in those captured positions would fundamentally alter their understanding of the enemy they faced. The first indication came at 0445 hours, when Gefreiter Hans Becker called out from a supply dugout carved into the hillside. "Herr Obergefreiter, you need to see this." His voice carried a note of disbelief that made Hoffmann quicken his pace through the snow. Inside the dugout, illuminated by weak morning light filtering through the entrance, lay equipment that seemed to come from a different world than the one German soldiers inhabited. Wooden crates stamped with American markings were stacked against earthen walls. Some had been pried open in the Americans' hasty retreat, revealing contents that made the German soldiers stop and stare. Hoffmann's first thought was that they had stumbled upon an officer's supply cache, or perhaps a special unit's equipment depot. But as more squads reported similar findings across the entire breakthrough sector, a disturbing reality emerged. This wasn't special equipment for elite units. This was standard issue for ordinary American infantry. The differences became apparent immediately. Where German soldiers carried bread bags and simple field packs, the Americans possessed individual field kits of staggering completeness. Each abandoned American position yielded the same discoveries. Individual mess kits made of aluminum rather than steel German troops used, complete with multiple compartments and folding handles. The weight difference was immediately noticeable. The American kit weighed perhaps half what German equipment did. Hoffmann examined an American soldier's abandoned pack. The construction quality was extraordinary. Heavy canvas with reinforced stitching, leather straps with brass fittings that showed no signs of rust despite the wet conditions, and a frame design that distributed weight more effectively than anything in German service. Inside were items that spoke to a level of logistical support German forces could barely imagine. Individual waterproof matches in sealed containers, compact can openers, the Americans called them P-38s, stamped from single pieces of steel and small enough to fit on a keychain, yet capable of opening any can efficiently. German soldiers used bayonets or combat knives for the same task. Water purification tablets in sealed foil packets, cigarette lighters that actually worked in the cold and damp, unlike the temperamental German versions that required constant maintenance. But it was the food that truly shocked the German soldiers. Hoffmann's men had been on reduced rations for months. The German supply system was collapsing under Allied bombing and the strain of fighting on multiple fronts. A German soldier's daily ration had shrunk to perhaps 2,000 calories, often consisting of dark bread, ersatz coffee made from acorns, and thin soup when available. The American K-rations, they discovered, told a different story. Each box was a complete meal for one man, breakfast, dinner, or supper, sealed in waxed cardboard that kept the contents dry. Inside each ration were canned meat, cheese, biscuits, chocolate bars, sugar tablets, chewing gum, cigarettes, and toilet paper. 4 cigarettes per meal, and they were Lucky Strikes, Chesterfields, Camels, real tobacco, not the sawdust mixed substitutes German troops endured. Hoffmann watched his men tear into the rations with desperate hunger. Becker opened a can marked ham and eggs and ate it cold, his face showing astonishment at the taste. Another soldier discovered fruit bars and coffee that was actual coffee, ground from real beans, with sugar and powdered cream included in individual packets. "They eat like this every day?" Becker asked, his mouth full of American chocolate. The question hung in the cold air. These weren't captured officers' rations or special supplies. According to the markings, these were standard field rations, produced in millions, issued to every American soldier in the field. The implications began to sink in as unit after unit across the breakthrough sector reported identical findings. The Americans weren't just well supplied. They were supplied at a level that suggested industrial capacity beyond anything Germany could match. Every American soldier carried more food in his pack than a German soldier might see in a week. And this was just the beginning of what they would discover. The equipment German soldiers discovered in the Ardennes wasn't anomalous. It represented the systematic result of American industrial mobilization that had been building since 1941. To understand the shock German troops experienced, one must understand the context of German supply conditions by December 1944. The German military supply system had been designed for short, decisive campaigns, the Blitzkrieg doctrine that had worked in Poland and France. But 4 years of total war across multiple fronts had stretched Germany's industrial capacity beyond its breaking point. Allied strategic bombing had destroyed 60% of Germany's synthetic fuel production by autumn 1944. The railroad network was crumbling under constant air attack. Raw material shortages forced constant substitutions and quality reductions. German soldiers in late 1944 experienced these failures daily. The standard Wehrmacht uniform had deteriorated in quality as the war progressed. Where early war uniforms used wool and quality cotton, late war production substituted rayon, recycled materials, and whatever textile fibers remained available. Boots that once featured leather construction now incorporated compressed paper and cardboard in their soles. They disintegrated in wet conditions. The food situation was critical. Germany's agricultural production had declined sharply as men were conscripted and fuel for farm machinery became scarce. The British blockade and loss of occupied territories cut off food imports. By 1944, civilian rations in Germany had fallen to barely 1,500 calories daily. Military rations received priority, but even frontline troops faced constant shortages. Hauptmann Friedrich Volkmann, a quartermaster officer with the 2nd Panzer Division, documented the supply crisis in his official reports. A typical German infantry company of 180 men required approximately 360 kilograms of food daily. By late 1944, Volkmann's reports show actual deliveries averaging 60 to 70% of requirements. Fresh meat appeared perhaps once weekly. Bread was supplemented with potato flour and sawdust. Coffee was entirely ersatz, made from roasted grain, acorns, or chicory root. Equipment shortages were equally severe. German industry could no longer produce sufficient quantities of basic infantry equipment. Soldiers carried mismatched gear accumulated from multiple sources. A typical German infantry squad might include equipment manufactured in 1940 alongside items from 1943, supplemented with captured Soviet, French, or Italian gear. Nothing was standardized, nothing was abundant. The contrast with American supply philosophy was fundamental. While Germany relied on conquered territories for resources and used slave labor to offset manpower shortages, the United States possessed unmatched industrial capacity protected by 2 oceans from enemy attack. American factories operated without fear of bombing. American supply lines stretched across the Atlantic but remained largely secure. The numbers told the story. In 1944, the United States produced approximately 96,000 aircraft, 17,000 tanks, 41 billion rounds of ammunition, and equipped millions of soldiers with complete, standardized equipment sets. Germany, by comparison, produced perhaps 40,000 aircraft and 9,000 tanks, while struggling to feed its population and maintain basic military supplies. American military logistics operated on principles of overwhelming abundance. The U.S. Army's Quartermaster Corps had calculated that each American soldier required approximately 30 pounds of supplies daily.
food, ammunition, fuel, replacement equipment, and medical supplies. The logistics network was designed to deliver this burden to every soldier, regardless of location. Liberty ships crossed the Atlantic in massive convoys. The Red Ball Express truck convoy system in France moved thousands of tons of supplies daily to advancing units. This abundance extended to seemingly minor items that collectively revealed the disparity. American soldiers received regular issues of new socks, critical for preventing trench foot in winter conditions. German soldiers often went months without replacement socks, leading to widespread foot injuries. American units had portable field kitchens that could serve hot meals to companies of men. German units increasingly relied on cold rations as fuel shortages made hot meal preparation irregular. The medical supplies told another stark story. Each American infantry company included medics equipped with morphine syrettes, sulfa powder for wound treatment, plasma for blood volume replacement, and comprehensive first aid kits. German medical supplies by late 1944 were critically short. Morphine was reserved for the most severe cases. Bandages were washed and reused. Frontline medical care had deteriorated to levels not seen since World War I. German intelligence had reported on American industrial capacity throughout the war, but statistics in reports differed from physical reality. Seeing American equipment in person, touching it, using it, tasting it, created visceral understanding that intelligence briefings never could. The German soldiers discovering American supplies in the Ardennes weren't just finding better equipment. They were discovering evidence of an industrial and logistics system so superior to their own that victory seemed impossible. Lieutenant Otto Brenner, commanding a company in the 12th Volksgrenadier Division, wrote in his diary on December 20, 1944, "We have captured American positions and found supplies beyond belief. Each enemy soldier carries more than our entire squad receives in a week. How can we win against such wealth? Every American seems to live better in war than German civilians live in peace." This realization spread through German units as the offensive progressed. The psychological impact was profound. German soldiers had been told they were fighting an enemy that was decadent, that American troops were soft and poorly equipped. The captured equipment revealed the opposite. An enemy with resources so vast that they equipped even ordinary infantrymen with gear German special units could only dream of possessing. The discovery extended beyond individual equipment to understanding American unit organization. Each American rifle company possessed jeeps for transportation, field telephones for communication, and standardized weapons that all used the same ammunition. German units mixed equipment from different eras and sources, creating maintenance and supply nightmares. The Americans had achieved true industrial standardization. But the most disturbing realization came from understanding what these equipment implied. The Americans could abandon these supplies. They would receive replacements. The logistics system that created this abundance wasn't strained by providing it. This was normal, sustainable production. Germany couldn't match this capacity even if every factory operated at full efficiency, which none did under constant Allied bombing. As German soldiers in the Ardennes consumed American rations and examined American equipment, they confronted an uncomfortable truth. They weren't just fighting an enemy with better tactics or more troops. They were fighting an industrial colossus that could outproduce, outsupply, and outlast them, regardless of German courage or tactical skill. The equipment scattered across those frozen positions represented a form of warfare where material abundance replaced traditional military virtues as the decisive factor.
What German soldiers discovered in the Ardennes represented more than abundant supplies. It revealed a fundamentally different approach to military production and soldier welfare that had been systematically developed since America's entry into the war in December 1941. The centerpiece of American supply superiority was the standardized production system that Detroit automotive engineers had adapted for military use. When Obergefreiter Hoffmann's unit discovered an abandoned American motor pool near Malmedy on December 21st, they found the physical evidence of this system. 23 GMC CCKW trucks, the famous deuce and a half, sat in neat rows, some disabled by retreating Americans, others simply abandoned with keys in the ignition. Field Wable Kurt Richter, who had worked as a mechanic in civilian life, examined these trucks with professional fascination. The technical specifications documented in captured maintenance manuals revealed a revolutionary design philosophy. Each truck was identical. Every bolt, every component, every measurement matched across the entire production run. The engines were simple inline 6 cylinders rated at 91.5 horsepower, not sophisticated, but reliable and easily maintained. What astounded Richter was the parts commonality. German military vehicles came from multiple manufacturers with minimal standardization. A Mercedes truck used different parts than an Opel truck. Repair required specialized knowledge and manufacturer-specific components. The American system was different. These GMC trucks shared components with Chevrolet and Studebaker military vehicles. A mechanic could service any American truck with the same tools and parts inventory. The maintenance kits found in each truck revealed the American support philosophy: complete tool sets in fitted metal boxes, spare parts packages including filters, belts, spark plugs, and gaskets, waterproof technical manuals written in clear English with detailed diagrams, lubrication charts showing exactly which grade of oil went where and at what intervals. Each truck was essentially a self-contained maintenance unit. German soldiers discovered American weapons with similar design philosophy. The M1 Garand rifle that equipped every American infantryman represented standardized production at unprecedented scale. Springfield Armory and Winchester produced these rifles at a combined rate exceeding 400,000 annually by 1944. Each rifle was manufactured to tolerances, ensuring parts interchangeability. A damaged rifle could be repaired using components from any other Garand. Watchmeister Ernst Müller, a weapons specialist with the 9th Panzer Division, conducted detailed examination of captured M1 Garands. His technical report, preserved in military archives, documented specifications that revealed American manufacturing capability. The Garand was semi-automatic, giving American riflemen significant firepower advantage over German Kar-98K bolt-action rifles. It fed from an 8-round en-bloc clip and weighed 9.5 pounds. But Mueller's report focused on manufacturing quality. The machining precision was extraordinary. Tolerances held the thousandths of an inch. The gas operating system functioned reliably in extreme cold where German weapons often failed. Chrome-lined barrels extended service life. Every surface showed careful finishing and quality control that German weapons production, rushed and resource-starved, could no longer achieve. The ammunition told another story. Cases of .30-06 Springfield cartridges stacked in captured supply dumps revealed American production capacity. Each cartridge showed consistent manufacturing quality. The brass cases were uniform. The bullets were precisely formed. Primer compound was reliable even in freezing temperatures. German ammunition by late 1944 showed visible quality variations as manufacturers substituted materials and rushed production. Personal equipment revealed the same pattern. The M1 helmet used an innovative two-piece design, an outer steel shell and an inner fiber liner with leather suspension. This design absorbed impact better than German Stahlhelm while weighing less. The helmet liner could be worn separately as a cap. Even the chin strap used better materials and more thoughtful design than German equivalents. American web gear, the system of belts, suspenders, and pouches that carried equipment, demonstrated superior ergonomics. The M1936 web equipment distributed weight across shoulders and hips more effectively than German leather systems. The canvas was treated with water-resistant coatings. Brass fittings resisted corrosion. Each component was designed to integrate with others in a modular system, allowing customization for different roles. The American sleeping bag stunned German soldiers accustomed to thin blankets. The M1 1942 mountain sleeping bag used layered construction with wool batting between water-resistant shells. It kept soldiers warm to temperatures far below freezing. German troops had no equivalent. They slept in greatcoats under whatever blankets they could scrounge, often sharing body heat in dugouts to survive winter nights. Medical supplies revealed perhaps the starkest disparity. Captured American aid stations contained supplies German medical officers could barely imagine:
whole blood plasma in sterile glass bottles, morphine syrettes by the hundreds, sulfa drugs in quantity, sterile bandages in sealed packages, surgical instruments made from stainless steel, portable field surgical kits containing everything needed for emergency operations. Stabsarzt's Heinrich Vogel, a German medical officer, reported discovering an American battalion aid station near Weit Fit. His inventory listed supplies sufficient to treat hundreds of casualties, more medical supplies than his entire division possessed. American medical philosophy assumed abundant supplies. German medical services operated under constant scarcity, rationing everything, making impossible choices about who received limited resources. The clothing disparity was equally stark. American soldiers wore layered cold-weather systems designed by quartermaster research teams, wool trousers and shirts, field jackets with removable liners, pile-lined parkas for extreme cold, insulated boots with removable felt liners, gloves in multiple weights for different conditions. Each item was manufactured to consistent standards and issued in sufficient quantities. German winter clothing by December 1944 was a mixture of inadequate issue items and improvised solutions. The standard greatcoat provided minimal insulation. Soldiers stuffed newspapers inside uniforms for warmth. Felt boots were chronically in short supply. Frostbite cases overwhelmed German medical facilities because clothing simply couldn't protect against prolonged cold exposure. But beyond individual items, German soldiers discovered something more significant: documentation revealing the system that created this abundance. Captured American supply manuals detailed logistics networks of staggering complexity. The tables of organization and equipment specified exactly what supplies each unit type received. Supply schedules showed planned deliveries extending months into the future. Everything was calculated, systematized, and produced in quantities ensuring availability. Oberst Werner Hoffmann, operations officer for the 116th Panzer Division, examined captured American logistics documents with growing concern. His analysis, submitted to division headquarters on December 27th, concluded that American supply capability exceeded German capacity by factors of 5 to 10 depending on category. The Americans weren't just better supplied, they operated under entirely different assumptions about what was possible in military logistics. The innovation wasn't a single weapon or technology, it was the complete integration of industrial capacity, standardized production, quality control, and logistics planning into a system that could equip millions of soldiers with identical, high-quality equipment and maintain them in the field indefinitely. This system represented American industrial philosophy applied to warfare: mass production, standardization, and abundance as strategic weapons. German soldiers examining American equipment weren't just seeing better rifles or warmer clothes. They were confronting evidence of an industrial civilization that could produce war materials at scales Germany could never match. The equipment scattered across the Ardennes was merely the visible output of factories, supply chains, and organizational systems that represented American power translated into physical form.
The psychological impact of discovering American equipment reached critical mass during the final days of December 1944 as the German offensive stalled and American counterattacks began. The moment of realization came not in a single dramatic event, but through thousands of small encounters that collectively shattered German morale. December 26, 1944, near Bastogne. Unteroffizier Paul Schneider's squad had been surviving on captured American rations for 3 days. The contrast with German supplies had become unbearable. When resupply finally arrived from German lines, the men stared at their allocation with barely concealed despair. Dark bread that was half sawdust, thin soup mix, and Urzet's coffee that tasted like burnt grain. Schneider watched his men reluctantly abandon the remaining American K-rations they'd been hoarding. Gefreiter Hans Kepler held up a can of American ham and eggs, looking at the German bread in his other hand. How do we beat an enemy who eats like officers while we starve like rats? The question had no answer. Schneider ordered the American rations buried. He couldn't risk his men refusing German supplies entirely.
Similar scenes occurred across German positions throughout the Ardennes salient. Official Wehrmacht reports, preserved in military archives, documented the crisis in stark terms. Morale assessments from late December noted unhealthy interest in enemy equipment and defeatist comparisons between German and American supplies. Company commanders reported discipline problems as soldiers openly questioned why they fought an enemy with such overwhelming material superiority. The combat implications became apparent as American forces counterattacked. German soldiers who had advanced enthusiastically during the offensive's opening days now fought with decreasing conviction. They had seen American supply dumps. They understood that every destroyed American unit would be replaced with fresh troops equipped with identical, abundant supplies. Meanwhile, German losses couldn't be replaced. Equipment couldn't be replenished. On December 28th, elements of the 12th SS Panzer Division captured an American supply convoy near Mannheim. The trucks contained winter clothing, parkas, insulated boots, wool socks, and thermal underwear in quantity sufficient for an entire regiment. German soldiers, many suffering from frostbite and wearing inadequate clothing, immediately stripped American corpses and prisoners of winter gear. Officers couldn't stop them. Hauptsturmführer Joseph Dietrich, commanding the convoy attack, filed a report that revealed the crisis. His men had abandoned their mission objectives to loot American supplies. They fought over American boots and jackets. Discipline collapsed as soldiers prioritized survival over military effectiveness. Dietrich requested permission to allow his men to wear American clothing, a request that highlighted how completely German supply systems had failed. The weapons disparity created tactical problems beyond morale. American units equipped with M1 Garands possessed significant firepower advantages over German infantry with bolt-action rifles. In firefights, Americans could maintain suppressive fire, while German soldiers worked their bolt actions between shots. German squad tactics developed around machine gun fire superiority failed when every American rifleman could deliver semi-automatic fire. Oberleutnant Friedrich Weber commanded a company that engaged American forces near Huffelise on December 30, 1944. His after-action report documented the tactical disadvantage. American riflemen maintain fire rates our men cannot match. Their semi-automatic rifles allow sustained shooting that pins our squads, while their machine guns maneuver. We suffer casualties attempting to close range where our weapons' effectiveness improves. The ammunition supply disparity created additional problems. American units fired freely, knowing resupply was certain. German forces rationed ammunition strictly. Fire discipline orders limited German soldiers to careful, aimed shots, while Americans employed suppressive fire tactics that consumed ammunition but controlled battlefields. The psychological effect of facing an enemy who could always shoot more created hesitancy among German troops. But the deepest impact came from understanding the implications. Lieutenant Otto Brenner, whose diary had documented earlier discoveries, wrote on January 1, 1945, "We have fought bravely. We have followed orders. But how do courage and discipline defeat an enemy who replaces every loss, who feeds every soldier like a king, who wastes ammunition because more always comes? We are fighting industrial capacity, not soldiers. How do men defeat factories?" German intelligence officers interrogating captured American soldiers received information that confirmed worst fears. The Americans described supply systems where requests for equipment were routinely filled. They spoke of regular mail delivery bringing packages from home. They mentioned hot showers in field facilities, regular clean uniforms, and medical care that evacuated wounded to hospitals within hours. To German soldiers, these descriptions seemed like fantasy. The contrast extended to prisoner treatment. American units captured during the offensive had been shocked by German supply poverty. American POWs reported German guards asking for cigarettes, chocolate, anything from their personal supplies. Some German units improved their rations by capturing Americans solely for the supplies they carried. This reversal, capturing enemy soldiers to obtain their superior supplies, represented complete breakdown of German logistics. Radio intercepts by American intelligence units documented German communication revealing the crisis. Messages between German units requested American cigarettes as trade goods. Reports mentioned soldiers refusing to return captured American equipment. One intercepted message from a battalion commander stated, "Men openly state they fight to capture American supplies, morale improving only when enemy equipment obtained." By early January, the psychological transformation was complete. German soldiers still fought. Professional pride, fear of consequences for surrender, and unit cohesion maintained combat effectiveness. But the conviction was gone. They had seen the evidence of American industrial power in physical form. They had tasted American rations, worn American clothes, and examined American weapons. They understood that courage and tactical skill couldn't overcome the material disparity they faced. The Battle of the Bulge ended in failure for Germany. The offensive exhausted remaining German strategic reserves and achieved no lasting objectives. But beyond the tactical defeat lay a deeper psychological collapse. The German soldiers who survived returned to their lines with stories about American abundance. These stories spread through the Wehrmacht, corroding morale throughout German forces. General Major Erich Brandenberger, commanding the German 7th Army during the offensive, wrote in his post-war memoir, "The offensive failed for many reasons, fuel shortages, weather, and American resistance, but the most damaging effect was what our soldiers discovered about the enemy. They saw that we could not match American resources. This knowledge destroyed fighting spirit more effectively than any defeat in battle."
The discoveries in the Ardennes created ripple effects that extended far beyond tactical considerations, fundamentally altering German military psychology and accelerating the Wehrmacht's collapse during the final months of the war. By February 1945, German units across all fronts had received detailed reports about American equipment and supply capabilities. The information spread through official channels and soldier correspondence, creating widespread understanding of the material disparity. This knowledge corroded the ideological foundations that had sustained German fighting spirit through years of increasingly difficult combat. Oberkommando der Wehrmacht intelligence summaries from January and February 1945 documented the psychological crisis. Frontline units reported increased desertion rates, particularly among recently conscripted soldiers and those transferred from Eastern Front, who encountered American forces for the first time. The contrast with Soviet equipment, which often matched German quality poverty, made American abundance even more shocking. German propaganda had portrayed Americans as soft and ineffective soldiers from a decadent society. The captured equipment revealed the opposite, a nation with industrial capacity so vast that it equipped even ordinary soldiers with gear that exceeded German standards in nearly every category. The propaganda narrative collapsed when confronted with physical evidence soldiers could touch, use, and compare directly with their own inadequate supplies. The desertion crisis reached unprecedented levels in March 1945. Wehrmacht records show that entire units surrendered to American forces specifically to obtain food and medical care. Interrogation reports documented German soldiers who had planned surrenders, timing them to maximize access to American supplies rather than waiting for Soviet capture, where treatment was known to be harsh and supplies non-existent. Oberst Rudolf Gersdorf, intelligence officer for Army Group B, compiled reports showing that German soldiers captured American equipment manuals and studied them, preparing for eventual surrender by learning about American supply systems. Some German units sent reconnaissance patrols with instructions to observe American supply operations rather than engage in combat. This represented complete breakdown of offensive spirit. The medical supply disparity had particularly severe psychological effects.
German soldiers wounded in combat understood that American medical care offered significantly better survival chances. Captured German medical officers reported that German wounded soldiers sometimes crawled toward American lines rather than their own aid stations, knowing American medical supplies and evacuation systems were superior. Stabsarzt Heinrich Vogel, whose earlier reports documented American medical supply abundance, wrote in February 1945 that German medical personnel faced ethical crises. They lacked supplies to treat wounded properly, while knowing captured American stations held everything needed. Some German medical units deliberately positioned near American lines, hoping for capture that would allow them to access adequate medical resources. The equipment disparity affected German unit cohesion in unexpected ways. Soldiers who had captured American gear jealously guarded it, creating informal hierarchies based on possession of American equipment rather than military rank. Men wearing American boots or carrying American weapons gained prestige. This undermined traditional Wehrmacht discipline structures and created resentment between soldiers with access to captured equipment and those without. Supply officers faced impossible situations. They couldn't meet soldiers' basic needs with German supplies, yet officially prohibited use of captured American equipment. Many officers ignored regulations, allowing men to use whatever equipment kept them combat effective. This pragmatic acceptance of supply failure represented abandonment of German military standards that had defined Wehrmacht professionalism. The industrial implications extended beyond immediate military concerns. German soldiers returning from American capture after the war told stories about American supply abundance that shocked German civilians. They described supply systems where waste was accepted because replacement was guaranteed. They mentioned Americans discarding perfectly functional equipment simply because newer versions became available. These accounts revealed industrial capacity that made Germany's total war mobilization seem primitive by comparison. Economic analysts in the post-war period documented that German soldiers' exposure to American equipment contributed to Germany's rapid acceptance of American occupation. Soldiers who had seen American material culture in military form understood that resistance was futile against such industrial power. This knowledge facilitated the psychological transition from enemy to occupied nation. The Eastern Front experienced different dynamics. German soldiers facing Soviets didn't encounter the same supply abundance, as Soviet logistics prioritized ammunition and fuel over soldier comfort. This created a perverse situation where German troops preferred Western Front assignment despite higher casualty risks, specifically because capture by Americans offered better treatment and access to supplies. Wehrmacht personnel records from early 1945 show that soldiers requested transfers to Western Front units, unprecedented behavior suggesting men preferred the possibility of American capture to continued service against Soviets. This preference indicated that supply considerations had become more important than traditional military factors in determining soldier motivation. The final weeks of the war saw a complete collapse of German supply systems. Units received no rations for days. Ammunition was exhausted and not replaced. Fuel for vehicles disappeared entirely. Medical supplies ran out entirely. German soldiers increasingly viewed surrender to Americans not as military defeat, but as escape from unsustainable material poverty. The captured American equipment they discovered in December had shown them that warfare could be prosecuted differently, with abundance rather than scarcity as the baseline assumption. By May 1945, Wehrmacht units facing American forces surrendered in massive numbers. The capitulation represented not just military defeat, but acknowledgement that Germany couldn't sustain combat against an enemy with such overwhelming industrial superiority. The American equipment German soldiers had discovered in the Ardennes had revealed a fundamental truth. Modern war was as much about production capacity as battlefield courage, and Germany had lost that competition decisively long before the final battles.